Hello and welcome to another episode of Agency Leadership Live. I'm your host, Chip Griffin, and today we're going to talk about whether you should fix your agency or you should sell it. Sort of like that old TV show, or maybe not old TV show. Maybe it's still on. I don't even know, but I saw it once on cable. Love It or List It, talking about rehabbing a home and then deciding to either keep it and live in it or to sell it. That's what I want you to think about with your agency because it's a question that I get pretty regularly from agency owners who are simply frustrated with the state of their agency. So, with that, let's go ahead and get into it. Okay, so today we're going to talk about 6 reasons that some of you may be thinking about just throwing in the towel and selling your business, and we'll talk about some potential solutions. And we're also going to talk about 2 questions that you need to ask yourself before you decide that selling is indeed the solution. So, let's start with letting you know that if you are interested in asking questions during this show, feel free just to leave a comment in the live chat on whatever platform you're watching on, and I'll try to integrate them with the show today. If you're watching this on replay, just leave a comment, and I'm happy to respond after the recording airs. And if you want some additional resources, let's see here. We've got previous videos at agencyleadership.tv, so you can watch all past live streams plus recorded videos there. And of course, if you hit subscribe, you'll be notified every time I publish a new video. And if you'd like some additional free resources or you'd like to join the Agency Leadership Slack community, just visit agencyleadership.com/join. There's absolutely no charge. Okay, so this is a question I get because agency owners come to me, they're frustrated, they're at their wits' end, they're trying to solve the problems that they perceive their agency to have, and they say to me, look, Chip, is this something that's fixable? Is this something I should address? Is this something I want to change, or should I just look for a buyer? Or sometimes someone may come to me and just say, look, I want to sell my agency. Can you help? And it turns out that the reason that they want to sell is because there's something that's broken about the way that their agency is working. Not necessarily broken to an outsider, and we'll talk about that a little bit later, but broken in their own minds and the way that they are seeing and working with their own business. So let's start by looking at 6 of the common reasons that you may want to be thinking this way and trying to decide whether to fix it or sell it. And the first one is just pure burnout. And I know a lot of folks are feeling that today with everything that's going on. Some of you have you've reached your wits' end. You've been doing this for 5, 10, 15, 20 years, maybe more, charging hard, putting in lots of time and effort, and you've just hit that point where things have piled up. When burnout happens, it's often because a number of different things have happened to contribute to it. So it's sort of like an airplane crash. That's how I like to think of burnout in a business sense for an entrepreneur. It's not that any one thing has gone wrong. It's just that it's the death by 1,000 cuts, the constant paper cuts that you get as a business owner. And right now, we're having some really deep paper cuts. Whether you're an agency that is taking on extra work because you're in a space that is getting particularly busy because of the pandemic and the shutdowns and all of that, or whether you are in the position where you've lost business, clients have put work on hold. Either way, you've just got things piling up in ways that it probably hasn't in recent years for you. So I know many of you are feeling that sense of burnout. So that's the first reason. The second reason is that you may not be in a position where you're feeling like you can manage the stress appropriately. And because of all of the work that needs to be done and the challenge of resources right now, many of you are feeling stress at unprecedented levels. And you need to figure out how to deal with that. And the way that some of you are feeling like you want to deal with that is by saying, look, it's time. I need to find a buyer for my agency. I can't be doing this. So it's a little bit different than the burnout, because burnout can just be fatigue and tiredness and lack of passion and excitement, whereas stress is really about, am I going to make the next payroll? Do I have to deal with some of the employee concerns that are taking place right now. Just all of that just piling up on top of you. The third reason that some of you may be in this position is the amount of time that you're spending. You may be spending 60, 80, 100 hours a week working on your business. And for short periods of time, that may be sustainable. But for many of you, you've been working those 60-hour weeks for years and years. And so it just contributes to that feeling of burnout. It's that piling on. It's you saying, I want to find other things to do. And I know a lot of folks right now are saying, with the shutdowns and all that, and the fact that we're not traveling as we normally would as agency owners, we're not going on site with clients as we often do. We're not out having business lunches all the time. We have all this found time. Maybe we don't have a commute. Great. So now, what's that? Another hour, hour and a half, 2 hours a day, depending on where you live and where you work? Well, no, that's not really how it works. And so the amount of time that you're putting into the business may be more than what you feel comfortable doing. And it contributes to the burnout and the stress. So all of these reasons are interrelated. So the next one is the amount of money that you're making. Maybe you're just not generating the kinds of profits that you want to have or you need to have as an agency owner. Maybe you're in a position where you're meeting payroll, but you're not able to pay yourself, or at least not pay yourself fairly. So that's another reason that some of you may be thinking about throwing in the towel and trying to find some sort of an exit strategy for your business. Next up is the type of work that you're doing. And it may be the type of work the agency doing, but more often I see the agency owner is frustrated with what they're working on. And so maybe you're spending more time running the business and less time doing client service. Maybe it's the other way around. Maybe you're stuck in client service, or you feel like you're stuck in client service because you haven't been able to transition relationships, as is often a challenge in many small agency environments. So you're dealing with the clients on a day-to-day basis when you'd rather be working on growing the business. And I think one of the things we all need to recognize is that each of us has different interests within the agency business itself. Some want to focus on sales, some want to focus on running the business, some want to focus on client service, some want to think about innovation. Whatever it is, as an owner, if you're taking on the risk and the stress of being an agency owner, of being a small business owner, you need to be doing the kind of work that you enjoy at least as much as possible. And so that's another thing that tends to drive this frustration and this sense of looking for an exit. And then finally, the last one I would put on this list is boredom. Plain up, you've been doing the same thing over and over again. You want change. You want a challenge, a different challenge. Maybe you've decided that you want to go and start a software company. Maybe you just want to start a different kind of agency. Maybe you just want to take a little bit of time off, clear your head. And this is something that can pop up at any time. But I know right now, many of you are just reevaluating what you're doing. And are you spending your professional career the way you want to? And so maybe you want to shake things up. Maybe you want to take time off and spend it with the family. There's a lot of different things that may be contributing to it. And if you're bored with what you're doing, if you feel like you're running your business, it's doing okay, it's generating the kind of money you want, you're not having to spend tons of time on it, but it's no longer as interesting to you as it once was. Those are sometimes signs that you may be looking to get out. So those are the 6 things to look at as far as potential reasons why you might be looking to sell instead of continuing on with your agency. But now let's take a look at the questions you need to ask yourself before you move ahead with the idea of selling the business or deciding to fix it. And so the first question is, can you fix it? I mean, can you fix it? Do you have it within yourself to make the changes that are needed in your business? Are they the kinds of challenges that you enjoy solving or that you can figure out how to solve? Can you bring in help? Can you work with your existing team? Is it solvable on your own? So that's question number 1. And if the answer to that is no, then fixing it is going to be a very difficult solution for you. So the next question is, can someone else fix it? Is there someone else out there with the expertise? Is there a potential acquirer who knows how to solve the problems that you have? Maybe they're larger and so they can have the economies of scale that can handle some of the challenges that you feel like you're having. If the answer to that is no, it's going to be very difficult to sell, because if you can't fix it and someone else can't fix it, then you have a real structural problem at the agency, and you're going to need to make much bigger changes. This is not a fix it problem. This is a rehab it problem. And so that's something that you may want to factor in, because if it's broken in such a way that someone else can't relatively easily fix it, the chances are they're not going to want to buy it. So you need to be able to envision someone who could make the acquisition and could fix the problems that you see with it, whether that's the amount of time it takes to do things, whether it's the profits that it's generating, or something else, whether it's the risks that are inherent in it. And so those are the kinds of questions you need to be asking yourself before you decide on the fix it or sell it equation. So now let's look at some of those problems, because if you're going to decide if you can fix it or someone else can fix it, you need to try to figure out what some of the solutions might be. So let's go back to the top of the list. Burnout. Okay, burnout is something that is obviously much more specific to you personally. And it's less perhaps with the business itself, but there are underlying causes, as I talked about, that are contributing to your burnout. So you need to be very clear with what those are. And part of that may be figuring out what it is that you really want to achieve. One of the things that I do with agency owners is I work with my aim-get framework. And the A in the aim-get framework is for ambition. It's what do you want? And so I've got a workbook that you can get on for free on the Agency Leadership Council, so agencyleadership.com/join. And you can download this workbook, and it helps you work through some of the challenges that you may have in your business as far as the amount of time you're putting in, the type of work that you're doing, the amount of money you're making. And you can try to figure out maybe what some of those specific components of burnout are and how you might want to address them so that you can shape the business in the way that you want. Because if you can address that burnout, then you may be on the path to having a business that you actually want to have again. Of course, it may also be that you need to take some time off, decompress. If you're in a position where you feel like you can't do that, I mean, one of the questions I love to ask agency owners when I first start working with them is, what would happen if you just disappeared from your business for the next 30 days? You just shut off email, shut off your phone, and said to your team, go with it. You're on your own for the next 30 days. What would happen? Would the business survive? What would fall through the cracks? And that helps you figure out the things that you probably need to address most immediately so that you can step back and take that deep breath and start to address the burnout. So burnout is absolutely something that you can overcome, but you need to figure out the root cause of that burnout in order to do that. Now, the second reason that we had looked at was stress. And so this is a question of looking at what are the risks in your business and how can you reduce those risks. So if you're stressed because you're having a hard time making payroll, or you're concerned about clients going away because you've got a client concentration problem, or there's so many different things that can be causing this stress, particularly these days. You need to, again, look at the individual causes and try to figure out how you might be able to address those. If you're having trouble or concern about meeting payroll every week, you probably need to reduce the size of your team so that you have more financial flexibility, more runway, so that you can not worry so much about that, because you don't want to be in that position where you're just watching your bank account to see if the money is coming in each week so that you'll be able to hit that next payroll or make the health insurance check or pay the rent or whatever it may be. So look at how you can fix that so you can reduce risk. If you've got a client concentration problem, then you need to work on a plan to try to fill in your client roster with additional clients that will help reduce the concentration of your largest clients. If you've got a client who's 40% of your revenue, how can you bring in some 5 and 10% clients to gradually move down the significance of that one big gorilla client? Because that's going to increase your stress level. What is it that's driving your stress level? How can you address those? If you're able to address those, then that will help you in this fix it or sell it equation. Time. The amount of time that you are spending personally. And this is one where the solutions will be different. Some of it may be just having discipline to say, these are the things that I need to do. I always want you to think about spending your time in terms of, would you pay someone your hourly rate to do that task? If not, it probably needs to come off your plate. It may go off the agency's plate altogether. It may be assigned to someone else. You may need to subcontract it out. but take a look at how you can reduce your time. And one of the things that we'll be talking about in an upcoming episode of the Chats with Chip podcast, in fact, I think it goes live tomorrow. I talked with Chris Williams, who runs the elite agency Inner Circle. And one of the things he talks about is how he's managed to get one of his agencies down so he's not spending very much time at all each week on it, because he's built the systems and processes and built a team that is able to run the day to day. And I'm not an advocate of the Tim Ferriss 4-hour work week as an overall concept, but there are some good ideas in there. You're probably not going to be able to boil down your time to 4 hours a week and still run a successful agency, but you may be able to take some of those concepts that are in there and figure out how you can reduce the amount of time that you're spending. I guarantee you, if you track your time, you're going to find places where you're spending too much time doing activities that are not meaningfully benefiting the agency, not meaningfully benefiting yourself. And if you do that, you can start to reduce your time. And the more that you're able to fix that, the more you may rejuvenate your interest and enthusiasm in your business. The other thing you may need to look at is, how do you delegate more effectively? Oftentimes when I see agency owners spending too much time, where they report to me that they're burnt out because they're spending so much time working on the business, we start going through an itemization of the things that they're working on and realize that a lot of it comes down to micromanagement. And it may not even be that they are micromanagers in the classical sense, but they have a hard time letting go. And this is because many of you started out as freelancers. You took on all of the client work yourself. You became an accidental agency owner because you started to take on more work than you could handle personally. And as that continues to go on, we often have a hard time letting go of the tasks that we've always been engaged in. We have a hard time giving up on the client relationship work that we love doing. It's part of why we probably had that initial growth of the agency, because we were so hands-on. But we need to look at that and determine, is that the highest, best use of my time? How can I go from 60 or 70 hours a week to a more reasonable 40 or 50 hours a week, or less if that's what you're looking for? Perhaps you've got additional time pressures right now because of the demands on your personal lives. Maybe you've got young kids at home and you're trying to figure out how to balance helping them through their education as their schools may not be in session. How do you balance that with your work life? How do you balance that with being an entrepreneur? It's difficult to be an entrepreneur in the best of times. It's really challenging now, but you need to evaluate how you're spending all of your time so that you can more effectively choose how you're going to spend it. All right, next on the list, money. Okay, money is very important. It's something that we all are needing. It's something that we all need to focus on as business owners, because the money is used not just to compensate ourselves, but it's used to compensate our teams and our vendors and our landlords and all that sort of thing. And so if your business isn't making the kind of money that you want it to or need it to, then you need to start looking very carefully at how you're spending it. We talked earlier about de-stressing by building yourself more runway, by cutting some of your staff costs potentially or other expenses. That's something you need to be looking at here. How do you try to improve your profitability? Because if you start making the kind of money that you want, you may again rejuvenate your enthusiasm in your business. It's sort of like on the Love It or List It show, where if you remodel your kitchen, maybe you're now happier being in there. You need to remodel your finances as a business. You need to look at what you're spending money on. You need to look at what you're charging. Part of your problem may well be pricing. If you're not pricing effectively, you're not going to generate the kind of money that you're looking to have as a business owner. So you need to fix that. All of these things go into the money side of the equation, and money drives a lot of these concerns that we've talked about before. Even the number of hours. If I told you I was going to pay you $10,000 an hour, you might be willing to put in more hours and not be as stressed out about it, right? So you need to try to think about how you can maximize your profitability if that's what's driving your concern and causing you to think about potentially selling. Next on the list, the type of work. So you need to figure out what it is that you want to do, and you need to structure the rest of your team, the rest of your agency operations, to allow you to do that. I was talking with an agency owner last week who is passionate about being able to do media relations and the client service side of things. And if that's what you want to do, you can build a team that successfully allows you to do it. one of the things we always think is that if we're going to be the business owner, we need to be focused on the business itself. And you do up to a point, but you can structure it so that you can spend more of your time on client service and have other folks who are dealing with some of the day-to-day operations of the business and some of the management things. And part of this will depend upon the size of your agency. The smaller you are, the more business operations things you're going to have to take on out of necessity. But you can develop a plan so you have a roadmap for how you get to that point where you're spending the majority of your time on the kinds of activities that you're passionate about, that you enjoy doing. And so you need to be very mindful of those kinds of things, because if you're throwing in the towel and looking to sell because you think you can't be doing the kind of work that you want to do, you're mistaken, because it can be done. You're just going to need to put the processes in place that will allow you to get there. Next on the list, boredom. If you are bored as an agency owner, it's time to think about how you shake things up. What can you do differently? Are you bored because of what you're doing personally? Are you bored because of what the rest of your agency is doing? Are you bored because you don't want to be in the agency business? What is it that is driving that? And how can you inject some excitement into it? I'm not talking some crazy excitement like, hey, let's go out and try something nutty today. Instead, I'm talking about how do you make changes to your business? Maybe it's innovating. Maybe you say, okay, I want to try out this new way of doing things. So if you've got a stable agency business, but you're kind of like, ho hum, it is what it is. Maybe you look at launching a software product, excitement into your business. You might look at changing the types of clients that you're working with, and gradually continue to expand that or take it to the next level. There's a lot of different ways that you can address boredom in your business so that you don't just feel frustrated with what you're doing. All right, so those are some initial ideas for how you address some of these problems. But let's say now you're at that point where you're saying, well, I appreciate what you're saying, Chip, but this is just not, I still feel like I want to sell. Fair enough. So what are the things that you need to think about if you're in that position and you want to sell? The first thing to keep in mind is that if there's an actual problem with your business, if there's a structural problem, if you're not generating the kinds of profits that you need to generate, if there are real risks in the business, it's going to make your business less attractive to potential buyers. So going back to the question that I asked earlier, can someone else fix those problems? If they can, then they will see value in your business and may be interested in acquiring it. It's sort of like when you find a home that you can fix up the things, particularly if they're more cosmetic than anything else. That's still attractive to a buyer. Certainly it would be at a discounted price, but it's attractive. On the other hand, if the problem is that the house is sitting on an old toxic waste dump or something like that, and it's very difficult to address, that's going to be very difficult to sell that kind of agency business. So you need to be realistic with yourself and probably ask some outside advisors about the actual saleability of your business if you have that concern. But if you're in that position where you've built something that the problems can be fixed, then you might have a potential buyer who's interested. But keep in mind, it's not a cure-all for you. Because if you're frustrated, if you've got any of these concerns that we've talked about, many of them may still exist even after the sale, and you will still be involved, because the vast majority of PR and marketing agencies are sold through the process of an earnout. So you will have an employment agreement with the acquirer. So it's not like you're simply being able to say, okay, I'm going to sell and I'm going to get out. This is going to be a quick and easy process. The sales process itself will take time, the negotiations, the due diligence, the paperwork and all that. We're talking many months. Beyond that, then you're probably talking 2, 3, 4 years of time that you're going to be working for the acquirer. So if your issue is the kind of work that you've been doing, make sure that you really address that in the process of your negotiations with the potential acquirer, because it will make a big difference in how you go about that sale. It will make a big difference in whether or not you've really addressed the problem that you're trying to fix. Because keep in mind, once you've sold it, you now have less control. So as difficult as you think it may be to fix something today, it's going to be even more difficult to fix it when you're an employee. So you really need to think about those kinds of things as you're putting together any kind of an agreement. You also need to remember that this is in the process of selling, to some extent, particularly if you're selling because you're debating whether to fix it or sell it, you're probably going to be selling at some kind of a discount. So you're likely taking away some of the risk, some of the stress in exchange for a payday, but your total earning potential is likely lower than if you were able to fix the problems yourself within the business. So you need to think about that as you're moving ahead. And you need to figure out if that's really a trade-off that you want to make. And it may well be. But ideally, when you're selling, you want to be selling on an upswing. You want to be selling when someone comes to you and says, hey, can I buy your agency? And your first reaction is, yeah, I don't think so. I'm pretty happy with the way things are. You will get your best price when you're not looking to sell. If you're looking to sell, it becomes much more challenging, particularly if you're selling because there's some flaw in the business that you're unhappy with. So overall, I would say my advice to you is you should always look to try to fix your business first if you can. You need to look and see what are the things that are really driving the problems and get to the root cause as much as possible. You need to take some time and take that fresh look at your business and look at it preferably with the help of your team or some friends who know the business or outside advisors, someone who can help you take that less biased look at things and help you solve those problems. Because most of the problems that your agencies have, at least the ones that I've talked to, and I've talked to many, many agencies over the years, most of your problems are actually fixable. And most of them are not as difficult to fix as you might think. And so if you take a look at the various components of your business and what's driving that stress or what's driving that boredom or what's driving your lack of profitability, and you dig right in, you'll be able to find a path forward. And once you fix those things, you may realize, I didn't want to sell after all. So think about those things. And I see Scott Armstrong has left a comment here. He says, this has really been an outstanding series for best practices in leadership. I appreciate your sharing your insight. Thank you, Scott. I appreciate that. I appreciate you listening. It is something I obviously enjoy doing. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here with you all 3 times a week. But I welcome any feedback you have, questions you have, suggestions for future topics. It is great to have this opportunity. I love working with agency owners to talk through the challenges. And hopefully you've gotten some value out of this. If you're sitting in a place where you're frustrated about your own business, feel free, drop me an email, give me a phone call, chip@agencyleadership.com. Happy to talk it through and see how we might be able to steer you in the right direction. As always, if you'd like to see a replay of this or any other show, just go to agencyleadership.tv. The workbook that I mentioned on ambition, plus several others, identity and positioning, things like that, agencyleadership.com/join will take you to the sign-up page for the Agency Leadership Council, and you'll also get into the Slack community that we have for agency leaders. So with that, I thank you all for joining me. I will be back here on Wednesday with another live show. Remember, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 12 noon Eastern. We're always here and always looking to have conversations. So thanks again for joining me and have a good day.